Hey everyone, a big welcome to the Forge Ahead show, hosted by me, Nick Elston, inspirational speaker, creator of unique mental health engagement strategies, a transformational speaking coach, and a mentor to have in your corner. The Forge Ahead show brings you the storytellers, the influencers, the people who have gone from adversity to excitement, forging something better, something beautiful, something powerful. So stay tuned, dive in, and be inspired by today's very special guest. Hey everyone, a big welcome back to the Forge Ahead show. We're on season 2, episode 14, and another amazing guest to launch us into July 2021. We have the wonderful, talented Meeta Darji. Big round of applause.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Nick.
You're very welcome. How are you feeling? You good?
I'm doing good. Yes, I'm doing good.
Good stuff. So this is being recorded just after Mental Health Awareness Week. A great time to bring you on, given your passions and your experiences around that. How did Mental Health Awareness Week look for you?
It was pretty busy, actually. Lots of engagements, lots of conversations. I had a lot, because I do quite a blend of work. So I work with corporate organizations, I work with individuals one-on-one, and then I also work in schools as well. So it's a real mixed bag. And last week there was quite a lot of one-on-ones, as well as the corporate conversations as well, which bled into yesterday as well. So I worked with a company yesterday and did a team meeting on stress resilience
Fantastic.
in half an hour. So yeah, it's been a little bit frazzling, but I'm still here.
Absolutely, that's exactly what it's about. So first and foremost, tell us kind of like who you are and what you do, what you're about.
So I'm a holistic health and wellness coach. I specialize in stress management and burnout. And I'm also an EFT practitioner, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, or tapping, as some people might know it, which I'm sure we'll come to talk about.
Absolutely. It's interesting, actually. It's really EFT. I kind of reason why I smiled when you said that is because it really took me back, because part of my recovery from things like breakdown and mental illness and stuff was kind of, there was no one clear path out of that place. It was kind of like a combination of little things. Yeah. And EFT and tapping was one of those things that really helped me along the way. So yeah, we absolutely will get into that. But you mentioned already that the space that we're in and the work that we do, obviously you are solution focused and I'm lived experience focused. However, the impact is we are still giving our energy. How do you recharge when your batteries are running low?
Well, that's a really good question. I really have to practice what I preach because I am talking about this day in, day out, and offering solutions and tools in the way of a stress resilience toolkit. And I think for me, I'm very, very aware now when I'm feeling stressed, when it's all getting a little bit too much. I can sense it in how I'm feeling physically, how I'm feeling emotionally. And I will go back to my toolkit, which will look different on different days. Sometimes I'm feeling really stressed and I will set an alarm on my phone for every hour to take some deep breaths. Sometimes I walk around the house and I'm just tapping on my face and my body just to kind of calm the nervous system down. I'll use my essential oils, which are my kind of little go-to hacks. So lots of different things. But yeah, I really, I'm good at calling myself out. My husband is pretty good at calling me out.
Well, we all need that. I mean, exactly the same with my wife, that she kind of balances me. So I absolutely get that. I guess stress and resilience, let alone the combination of the words, are very subjective terms. It seems to mean different things to different people. So from your perspective as a practitioner, as a solution-focused person, could you define what stress is and what resilience is to you?
Yeah, so stress, I think you're absolutely right. And I think it means something different to everyone. And one of the things I do in my workshops, and even when I'm working with people one-on-one, is if you imagine, we're all different in terms of stress and how we feel stress, how we deal with stress. and what's going on in our lives. But if we think of everyone as having a stress bucket, I suppose, and how that bucket is filled. Stress isn't just the emotional stress and the emotional traumas. You know, even if you're going through a physical injury, for example, or any kind of inflammation, that's still stress on your body. And then there's the chemical side of stress, like the toxins that are going into the body. So there's so many elements that go into this stress bucket, which then eventually leads to burnout. And I think it's just looking at people's stress buckets and how we can empty some of those buckets, and whether that looks like meditation, whether that looks like EFT, whether that looks like digital hygiene and really switching off from social media. You know, it's really different for everyone. And I think that's where the resilience comes in, is being able to have those tools to bounce back. And there is no one size fits all. That's the complicated yet lovely thing about stress resilience, because you know, you do these talks or we're working one-on-one with people and they're like, well, what's the formula, what's the magic bullet, you know, what pill do I take? And the honest answer, like very much like you said in your own personal journey, there isn't. And that's really, that was my journey too, of what got me here. And all of the tools that I use and I preach are very much tried and tested by myself, because they've got me to where I am today. And they're scientifically proven, whether that's gratitude or whether that is, you know, looking at digital hygiene or things like that. It's all very much science-based, you know, the morning routine and like taking control of the day before the day takes control over you. And yeah, so it's a real blend, I guess.
I love that. I mean, you mentioned some of the things that, should I say, from maybe an alpha male perspective, but even not necessarily male, there's certainly that angle that sometimes of the fluffy stuff is kind of frowned upon, is kind of disregarded as too soft, I guess, or kind of like hippie shit, that kind of stuff that people kind of assume that. Now, I'll be honest, I was that guy years ago who would have said that. So I was chatting to somebody earlier on about Reiki and lots of different things that I've since experienced the real benefits of those things. Yeah, but I would have been the one to scoff. So do you kind of find you need to counter that sometimes with people? You work a lot with execs and C-suites and kind of corporate organizations. Do you find that actually you have to prove yourself before you even get them to engage in what you're trying to coach?
Yeah, I really agree with what you said about one of the things I do stress when I'm giving these talks is that self-care is just the term self-care. It kind of has these connotations with it, like, you know, getting your nails done and having a hot bath and there might be an element of that. I know, so do I. I'm not knocking the hot bath, by the way. But there is an element of that for some people in terms of reducing their stress load. Absolutely. But self-care, you know, it's this word is just sort of banded around, and really self-care isn't a trend. I always say this, it's more of a responsibility. It's especially now as we are in this pandemic, life as we know it has completely changed, and 2019 is just a thing of the past now. You know, normal life is, what's that even going to look like? We really need to start prioritizing these self-care, using these tools and techniques to really sort of empty that bucket. So in answer to your question, yes, I do have a little bit of pushback. A lot of what I do, like I said, is very much science-based. You know, there's a little bit of woo in there. You know, like we're talking about tapping on our face, so
you can be a bit of woo. I'm up for a bit of woo.
There's a little bit of everything, but I think there's something for everyone. And really, a bit like you, there is very much a lived experience that has brought me to this place, because my background was in PR and communications for 12 years. I haven't been doing this for years and years. So there is very much that lived experience. And I guess when you are sharing your personal story about, say, for example, using tapping because I couldn't get back into a car after a horrific car accident, you know, suddenly something clicks and they're like, okay, I'm listening, you know.
That universal kick at the arse just to kind of get things going.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's the power of the personal story, which I know you and I have talked about.
Yeah.
But that is where I think the gold lies, really, because once you've got that personal story, it's not really, you know, I didn't spend years and years and years studying this, you know, it has very much come from my own struggles.
Yeah.
And that's what drives my passion to help others. So, you know, switch off if you don't want to listen, but these tools actually work. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's it. And because it is from a lived experience perspective, nobody can tell you you're wrong, because what you're saying is that these things work for me. This is my story. You cannot tell me I'm wrong. Now, so I absolutely get where you're coming from. Well, I definitely want to come on to your personal story if you're happy to share that very shortly.
Yeah.
Before we get to that point, though, if people may be getting confused with this EFT, emotional freedom technique, this tapping thing. We forget sometimes what other people don't know.
What we know, yes.
Just in case, I mean, they're my audience and they're pretty much used to the fluffy side of life. However, please tell us what EFT is and how it works and how it looks for you and your clients.
Yeah, so EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, or tapping, as most people know it. It's essentially a technique that rewires the brain. And again, people are like, stay with me here. But it looks like, if you're familiar with acupuncture, which most people are, it's just like acupuncture, but without the needles. Mm-hmm. So you're still activating the same meridian points in your body, but you're doing it with your fingers. So in theory, it kind of looks a little bit like this, where you're tapping on parts of your face and body. And by doing that, you are activating these meridian points, which is telling your brain to calm down. It's a really, really effective tool for reducing stress and anxiety in minutes. I mean, an hour, and the research is out there, but like an hour of tapping can reduce your anxiety by about 40%, which pill can do that? You know, like, it's pretty amazing. And again, very much a lived experience. I guess if I had to sort of describe it, it's a bit like, you know, you've got the woo of the energy medicine, and then you've got talk therapy. So imagine being a therapist, processing your emotions, your past, your childhood traumas, all the while you're tapping. And at the end of that session, or say you came back to another session and you talked about the same things, you wouldn't have that emotional charge. You wouldn't feel that discomfort in your belly or wherever you feel the anxiety. It's just completely gone. And I think that, in my opinion, I think that is where EFT can work through so much in one session compared to, say, just a talk therapy session, which might take you weeks or months to get to. So extremely, extremely powerful. From my personal experience, I found it through my journey. And yes, very much regarding a horrific car accident that I had, which left me crippled with mental and physical issues, one of which was getting back into the car, turning left, because I was turning left when I had the car accident. Simple things that, you know, a few months before were absolutely no issue for me. The EFT reduced that emotional charge. I mean, I was living in the States at the time. It was one of those, I can't just hop on the tube and go and drop my kids off to school. I had to get back in a car. There was absolutely no choice. You have to drive everywhere. This
is a really good place. Do tell us how you kind of got to where you are today, because I know that's a huge thing. Of course, the accident is a huge thing. But I also know, actually, in the grand scheme of things, in terms of living internationally, it's also just another part of the jigsaw that's made you who you are and has brought you to where you are today. So give us some background as to kind of your challenges, your story, your adversity.
Yeah, so I think it was about 6 years ago, I moved to the States with my family through my husband's work. And about 3 weeks into our adventure, I had a awful car accident. I've got 2 daughters and they were both in the car with me, to the point where the car was a complete write-off. And to make matters worse, it was a brand new car, brand new in that it was 20 minutes delivered to my house.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, I can laugh about it now, you know, but,
so
but at the time I was like, oh my God, the car. But the car was a complete write-off. Thankfully, we managed to walk away from that unhurt. But it did leave me quite sort of mentally and physically just not feeling like myself for a very long time afterwards. And I'd had, I was fine, really. I'd had loads of tests done. I was told by the doctor that everything was fine, and my test came back normal. And but I didn't feel like myself. And I sort of, something inside of me just knew that I had to dig a little bit deeper. So I went down the kind of holistic health rabbit hole and found myself a practitioner and did some more tests, and actually found that my hormone levels were out of whack, my cortisol levels were out of whack. I mean, there was just so many explanations for my symptoms, which was great, because I was like, okay, it's not all in my head. And then followed a journey of making changes to my diet, to my lifestyle, to my mindset. And the transformation in me was like night and day. Like, I couldn't believe how different I'd felt. And I just thought, why the hell doesn't everybody know about this? And thereon drove me a passion to like learn a little bit more. So I went back to the books, went back to studying to become a health coach. And that's where Naturally Nourished with Meeta was born, because it was like a real drive to inform and inspire and just educate others on this whole other world, and just advocate for your own health. Always ask questions. There's not always just one way. Keep an open mind, and the woo works.
Yeah, absolutely does. And thank you for sharing that so candidly as well. It's always really humbled when people share their experiences, and again, it's another great example that without your most challenging times, that your most exciting times wouldn't be happening right now. And obviously kind of making your own way in the world, doing what you're doing. It's an amazing thing. Now, I know you're very passionate about things like mindfulness, meditation, breath work. Again, there's something in the terminology, especially with men, not exclusively, but especially with men. If I do a lot of work in construction, if I turn up on site for a toolbox talk and I use the word meditation, I'll be kicked off pretty much very, very quickly. But if I just say, like, just sit and breathe and think about your stuff without the emotion attached to it, yeah, we can do that. Bloody meditation. I think there's a lot to be said for a lot of these aspects of well-being that I guess maybe we've been conditioned culturally and generationally to believe that things like self-care is selfish, that we feel guilty when we start to put ourselves before anything or anyone, or that kind of tribal mentality of you don't want to appear weak by being able to reach out for help. Is that something you've experienced with your clients and your groups and stuff that you run?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, and it's true, how you pitch it is very tailored to the
power
audience.
Power in the wording.
Yeah, absolutely. I see a lot of that, particularly the guilt, and especially working mothers. There's a lot of guilt around that self-care piece. I haven't got time for me. Yeah, I haven't got time for me. I mean, I'm a mum of two. I've been there very much so. I don't have time for me. Basically, when I'm working, I feel guilty that I'm not with my kids, and when I'm with my kids, I feel guilty that I'm not doing enough at work. And you kind of never feel like you're doing a good enough job in either spaces. And a lot of what I sort of share is that you don't need hours and hours of sitting like a monk meditating. Like, it doesn't look like that, and it looks different for everyone, but you can do this in 5-10 minute increments. That's where my journey began. When I meditate every morning now, but this is I'm like five years into this. It didn't look like that when I first began. I was sat on my bed with an app in my ears for 5 minutes, and that's how it all began. And it was just those 5 minutes where I was like, oh gosh, I quite enjoy this peaceful, calm time before the chaos of the day begins. And then you can add on to that and maybe do a little bit of stretching or go for a run or something else. But it's these 5 minute increments which add up over time, and everyone can do 5 minutes. I get this all the time. I get this pushback. I don't have time. Give me 60 seconds of breathing. Do it with me now. And I will do this now. I've gone from really evolved my talks from me kind of just standing there saying, this is really good for you. Let's just do it now together. And everyone's like, oh, feel a bit uncomfortable. Oh, just try. You know, you can turn your camera off on Zoom if you want to, and you'd prefer to have that quiet time. But let's just give it a go. And that is, I think, where you see sort of the power in the practice.
Yeah.
Because I did it yesterday. I did a session, 30-minute session, and I said, you know, talk to them all about the tapping. And I said, let's just give it a go. And you could see some of them were really open to it. And some of them were like, oh God, this is, what are we doing? And you know, you just had this screen of like 20 people tapping on their face. But the feedback afterwards and the changes in people's emotional state was like, what did you just do? That was amazing, you know? And I think so there's real power in the practice. And I try and bring the interactive element to a lot of that, you know, and just building it up, small habits.
I think that's really important. I think the other resistance to things like meditation is that kind of your mind runs too fast, but that's kind of the point why we need to do these things. And
exactly.
As you know, you've attended my speaking academy recently.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It's why I inject meditation into the day, even though it's about public speaking. It's things that create anxiety. People get nervous about speaking, and by having that in place, it does reset our state. And even the people that don't want to engage, absolutely engage, and they feel better for it as well. To the extent that sometimes, even myself, when I'm kind of organizing stuff behind the scenes when people are doing this exercise, I kind of think, oh, that's lovely. It's kind of like a passive relaxation, isn't it? I quite like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like pressing that reset button, you know, and I think that's the thing, is that we need to be doing more of that. You know, I will do a couple of deep breaths before I go and pick up my kids when I'm sitting in the car park at the school. You know, like it's finding those, because you know what's coming next. Like, have you got
just
a snack?
before the carnage hit.
I'm starving. And it is carnage. I mean, let's face it, you've done like a day's work in like 4 hours, and then you're like putting mum hat on. It is a juggle, and the struggle is real.
The struggle absolutely is real. I mean, I'm quite fortunate. I've just got a small Shih Tzu to look after, and that's it. I'm good as gold. And she plays up enough sometimes, but yeah, I'm quite lucky that way. I guess the other thing I wanted to touch on was this digital kind of health element. It's something that we have a lot of people from different walks of life, speakers and stuff with really high profiles that have been on the show about how they manage things like trolls and cutting off and that kind of stuff. Digital health is so important. Constant overwhelm leads to disconnection, which is kind of the opposite thing what we're trying to achieve from having that kind of platform and visibility that we have.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate, got the rag and bone man going by at the same time. I'm going to keep this in. This is cool.
I love it.
But that's why I was distracted. Keep it real, always authentic.
Yeah, exactly. Authentic.
Yeah, so I don't know what he's saying. He's just shouting out into a tunnel. But anyway, I digress. But anyway, where were we? Digital health. Yeah, absolutely. That seems to be a real priority for you and how you help your clients. Talk to us about that. What does digital health look like? What good digital health looks like? How do you manage things like toxicity online? How do you manage that overwhelmed feeling of those constant pings and beeps and whistles and everything else?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still on this journey, if I'm completely honest, with digital hygiene as well, and I really have to call myself out. But, you know, these devices that can now do absolutely everything for us. I had a picture of a Nokia phone up on one of my presentations yesterday, because remember the days where you could just make a phone call?
Yeah, and play snakes.
And play snakes. Oh, snake. Oh my gosh, you've just taken me back. But now you can do absolutely everything with these devices. And I have a real love-hate relationship with the device. I think, you know, notifications is just one area, that constant pinging. I think the stat is something like 2/3 of people that have a smartphone don't turn off their notifications. I've switched off all notifications on my phone. Game changer. It wins you back so much time, because by now, 30 minutes into this conversation, my phone would have buzzed at least 15 times, whether that's the BBC, my mum trying to get hold of me, Instagram, LinkedIn, you know, like it's just too much. And those little pings are all stressors, you know, that's stuff that we could do without. So notifications is a real game changer. Looking at your screen time and really looking at your screen time and really evaluate. And that's painful to do, because you're like, I was on Instagram for how long? And really assessing kind of social media, I think, is, again, a tough call, particularly in what we do when we're trying to, really get the word out in terms of raising awareness of mental health and all these tools and techniques. But I've really dialed back my kind of social media interaction, certainly from a personal perspective, and try and just use them professionally. And I think it's looking at whether you are spending that long on social media or any other kind of a platform, are you making meaningful connections, or are you just mindlessly scrolling? Meaningful connections. I mean, that's how I met you. That's how we kind of connected, was through LinkedIn. And that's why I'm sitting here and we're having this conversation. So that was a really, exactly. That was a really meaningful connection. But there is the whole mindless scrolling. And there's a reason why you can't ever stop scrolling, because there's people that are employed to keep us doing that and keep us addicted to these devices. So a lot of what I do is around that kind of education piece. And also in the morning, people reach for their phones first thing. They use the phone as the alarm, and the first thing they do is look at the phone, and it's that text message, that the news, anything that's coming in is like, before you've even got out of bed, it's like your stress bucket is like overflowing, and that's just from what's going on your phone.
Exactly. I mean, this is everything. Is my business, my personal life, and even without the social media elements, you have things like even my video doorbell. And I can see the postman swearing at me when I'm not in. I mean, this is what apps were made for, surely. But we get all these kind of constant notifications even without social media. It's really easy to see why people can get really overwhelmed with the noise. We both work in the education space as well, as you said, with students. That I think for me the biggest danger is actually from a well-being perspective, is that a lot of students will say, well, what's the point in having an opinion if it's not going to be liked or shared or retweeted? So you kind of seek your accountability in the likes and the shares and the retweets. And I think that's quite a dangerous position, really, because it kind of makes you feel that your opinion isn't valid if it's not then backed up by other people. Now, we've always kind of had that in social situations, but now it's amplified. I mean, it's gone nuts.
100%. I would completely agree with you. And I am a mother of a teenager. So this is very much a lived experience, and there have been times where I've really had to sit down and have this conversation and say, look, I didn't have one of these devices when I was your age. I'm navigating this with you, hands up. This is dangerous territory and very, very toxic for your mental well-being. Do we need that validation through likes and through shares? And so-and-so posted something and she got 2,000 likes. Okay, what does that actually mean to you? Why is that important to you? And it's that whole kind of self-worth, I am enough piece, I think, which is why we're seeing so many mental health issues, I think, with the younger generation, because there are toxic things like these devices and like social media, which you and I didn't have when we were growing up. So it's a really difficult one to navigate. But I do find that when I'm talking to the sort of student voices and that age group, there is a lot of awareness actually amongst them that it's quite a dangerous device. I'm quite surprised by that. They do obviously they don't love me telling them stay away from social media
and fun police is in town.
Don't look at your phone, and but there are those, they do get it. They are beginning to understand it, because mental health is getting a lot of airtime now. And I think especially with the pandemic and with kids being at home, again, that's been another challenge. Your kids are at home all the time and they want to use these devices to connect with friends. Of course, connect with your friends, because you don't want to be sat on these four walls with me all the time, but don't spend ages just mindlessly scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. But if you want to FaceTime your friends for 2 hours, go for it.
Exactly. I think that doom scrolling element is certainly true. Especially if you're not in a good place when you first pick up your device, that can be quite a really dangerous kind of rabbit hole to go down, I guess. But it is interesting that Harvard did a study between 18 and 29-year-olds, a slightly older demographic than what we're talking about. But that social media was the biggest source of anxiety as a trigger, but in the same survey with the same demographic, it was the biggest source of positive community for mental health.
Yeah.
So it's a complete paradox. And the thing
Yeah.
that could destroy us is the thing that really saves us a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I think it comes back down to then how we decide to immerse in those platforms. And I think from my point of view, the reason why I came away from the social medias over the past year was exactly that. I didn't feel strong enough at times. Everyone's been through those challenges over the past 14 months as it stands today. Then sometimes I didn't feel well enough in myself, strong enough in myself to actually choose well, to decide how I was going to immerse and to not get hypersensitive around different things or defensive around toxicity online. And it's difficult. I think, again, it's another paradox. The bigger the audience, the more visibility, the more notifications and noise you get back, and the higher the risk of somebody having a little pop shot or something, whatever that may be. And something actually I do want to talk to you about, now we've come on to this, is that mental health arena generally. There is certainly greater awareness. I think there's maybe more positive impact being created in the space. I think there's also been that rise of people using mental health as a sales pitch kind of thing, which doesn't really sit well with me, because the awareness is great, whether it's lived experience or solution focused, both fantastic. But I guess what I see more of is that people maybe who are sales trainers before have now put dyslexic sales trainers as a kind of a hook to try and drive kind of sales to their door. And I think there's a real risk that it helps kind of really compound the negative terminology around the phrase mental health. Because as we both know, mental health is just a neutral state, like physical health. Whether it's good or bad, that's a whole different thing. But there's a lot of negativity around the term mental health because it's being used in a way which isn't absolutely correct. So people will say to me, Nick, I have mental health. Absolutely you do. 100% of the humans on the planet do. And I think that when you have kind of that potentially unscrupulous behavior when it comes to using mental health as a sales tool, that may damage the likes of ourselves who are actually doing this for a profession, a cause, a passion, whatever that may be. We've been doing this for a lot longer than before the pandemic, and we'll be doing this a lot longer in the future. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's how we're using the term mental health and what that actually means in organizations. And I think some people have, I don't want to say jumped on the bandwagon. That's not where I'm going with this, but they will use that as a tool, or have mental health first aiders, which, is great. And I think we need to have that kind of training. But then at the same time, what are we doing with these people? Like, they're then sat in these organizations. Like, am I going to them? They're not trained to deal with. I think the mental health piece is an interesting one, and how people are using that, particularly in the way of sort of starting the conversation. And if I'm thinking about organizations, it's, we're doing some work on mental health. We've got 3 trained mental health first aid, mental health trainers in the company. We're doing our bit. And I think that's where the frustration kind of lies with me as well. It's like, well, that's great. But these people have had like maybe a 1-day training. And yes, they've probably increased their awareness tenfold of complexities within the mental health world. But how are they actually how does that translate in your company, And it's having these conversations, which I know you're really passionate about as well, is having these conversations all day, every single day, It's that ask twice. How are you doing? I'm doing well. Are you really doing okay? What's going on? And like we would talk about our physical health, a broken leg, you can see a broken leg. Mental health is this invisible illness that, people just shy away from. So I think for me, it's having that constant conversation and not needing a hook, so to speak. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that. And actually, you touched on something really, really kind of crucial there as well. I think certainly from a mental health perspective, I've kind of been asking audiences to kind of view mental health as a muscle, something that we all have, something that we can exercise and nurture and nourish. See what I did there? Every single day to give ourselves the best chance of being smarter, stronger, happier, more successful, whatever those subjective terms means to you. And I think if we do that, then the culture changes anyway. Mental illness and mental health, because of our use of the terminology, creates a heaviness. And because of that, people don't want to have these conversations every day. But if we make it about personal development, if we make it about exercise, everyone will have those conversations without the heaviness attached to it. I think you also mentioned about like mental health first aiders and having people mental health trainers. Fantastic. And like you said, as an awareness piece,
it's great.
Yeah. And it's amazing. However, they're not a fix. And I think that's the challenge, is that they certainly never signed up for a pandemic. So suddenly they've turned into this kind of like triage and treatment operation within organizations. And it's those people that are struggling most now. It's the people that look after other people.
I was just about to say that. The anxiety that we're putting them under.
It's crazy. And I mean, it's that question I've been asking a lot. I did a workshop on this yesterday for an organisation about who looks after the people that looks after people.
Yeah.
And that's a real challenge, that we all have responsibilities, whether it's to our friends and family or our teams or our employees or our colleagues. But the responsibility, unless you are solution focused or a medical professional, isn't to fix them.
No.
It's just to listen, to actively listen, to actively signpost. Don't judge. You don't have to agree, but you can accept it. And then you empower more positive conversations. Now, I can get my soapbox back for hours, so I'm going to stop it here.
No, I agree. No, I agree with a lot of that. And, when I'm talking to organizations, it's funny because a lot of it is just the active listening. People just want to talk, and it's doing that exactly like you said, no judgment, do it with a beginner's mind, they might be really opening up to you on something that is going on in their personal life. Just listen. You don't have to. And we're in this world of fixers, right? We want to be able to, oh, I'm really sorry, but why don't you try this? And why don't you try that? I'm just as guilty of it myself. But, it's like sometimes people just need to talk. They just need to be heard. And even if you're saying, look, I don't really know where to go with this, and I don't really know where to kind of signpost you, but thanks for sharing it, because you obviously look a little lighter and feel better for just sharing your story,
But that's it. I mean, essentially in life, people just want to be heard. They want to be understood. And then most of the time, they kind of find their own way forward from their adversity, from their challenge. And as I showcased at the Speaking Academy, it's kind of the whole concept of my work in that space with that cap on, literally, is that unless you can deliver any message, have any conversation with clarity and power and emotion, that it will have an impact on you and your ability to succeed on any level in a very negative way. We need to be better at these conversations, and certainly taking a stigma away is part of that. But also knowing that there is a responsibility. This isn't shirking. Just we don't fix people. It's not shirking responsibility. You still have a massive responsibility, because actually somebody that comes to you tomorrow, Meeta, could be the only time they decide to open up to anybody. So we have a massive responsibility, but it's still not to fix them. Yeah. And it seems to be like a human flaw wrapped in a kindness that we feel the need to fix everybody that comes to us.
Yeah.
And then we carry the burden on our shoulders. We don't sleep well. We will then run ourselves into the ground.
Yeah, I think it's there's so much to be said for that. And as you were talking about that, I was just thinking about the word kind of just boundaries, because that is one of the tools in my toolbox is kind of just setting those boundaries, because of course of what we do on a day in, day out basis we take on a lot as well, and after a day's work it can be quite heavy. And it's setting those boundaries which are so important to just switch off, unwind. And, that's not my story, that I don't need to carry that thought. That's their stuff and they've got it off their chest. I don't need to try and then I don't need to worry at night trying to help them, how I'm going to help them and how I'm going to fix them. That's okay. They didn't need it. They just wanted to talk.
Exactly. And I think that the responsibility then is that, and we're both very good at this because professionally it's what we do, is we actively signpost. If we cannot help somebody, then we will know people that can. We will know trusted professionals. We will know organizations. We will have channels for people to reach out to. And I guess sadly, in a way, if we're speaking in the corporate space, the fastest route to help is through that organization rather than because public services are just massively overwhelmed. And there's always a wait. So if you are fortunate enough to be in an organization with things like EAP or counseling or whatever that may be, you go that way. That's the fastest route. However, traditionally, that's the one place that we don't like to show vulnerability is in the workplace. And that's why I think the work that you do is amazing, and keep on doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank
you.
Meeta,
what's next for Meeta Darji?
Well, I think I'm just, I'm moving house next month. So cool. That is lots of tapping and stress relief needed for that. But I'm really, I think for me, I've thought really hard about the corporate space and the educational space, and even working one-on-one. And they're really, I'm enjoying it all. No day is the same. I get a lot out of those different audiences. So I think it's just more of that, more people that I'd like to touch in a naturally nourished way.
Amazing.
Inform, educate, and inspire. That's what I'm here to do through my kind of lived experience, and finding purpose through my pain is where I'm going to be.
Amazing. And I strongly suggest to everybody to reach out to Meeta. Her links and stuff are in the bio. Please do connect, ask questions. I'm sure she'll be delighted to hear from you, and all that jazz. So the question I ask everybody on the show is this. I am now the MC of O2 Arena. 20,000 people have paid our hard-earned money to come and hear you do your thing. I'm just about to call you to the stage and your walk-on music kicks in. What would that walk-on music track be?
This is a really hard one. I was really stressed about this one, actually. My taste in music is so eclectic. And at first, I thought of something that's a real upbeat Bollywood number, because I love Bollywood. I love dancing. My kids would hate it, which just made me so happy.
Bonus.
But I couldn't think of like one specific song. I definitely have some kind of a Bollywood vibe going on. Cool. But also the other song, if I'm allowed to have a second.
Of course you can.
I would say it's Alicia Keys' Underdog. I don't know if you've heard it.
No.
But it's, it came out, I think it came out fairly recently during the pandemic, but it's all about, they said that I could never make it, but I'm here to break the mold. The only dream I'm chasing is my own, or something along those lines.
I love that.
And I love it. And when I say, they think I wouldn't make it, by they, I mean me. It's me saying that to
we got to get out of our own way.
Exactly, and get out of my own head. So I love that. It's all about bringing up the underdog and rising up. So
I promise to put some Bollywood on the playlist when it happens.
Yes, I'm going to have to send you one.
And yes, you will. And absolutely, I will put Alicia Keys on, and I'll be checking that out as soon as this recording's finished as well. And both of those tracks will be on the playlist that's going to come at the end of season 2. All of our amazing speakers and guests are going to have all their walk-on music in one motivational playlist. I'm really excited to put that one together. So for now, Meeta Darji, big rounds of applause.
Thank you. And thank you, Nick, for all the work that you're doing in this space as well, and touching so many lives. Love it.
Thank you so much, Meeta. It's been a real pleasure to have you on. And for everybody else, please do stay tuned for the next episode of the Forge Ahead Show coming next week. Thick and fast at the moment. We'll have another amazing guest to bring you. So please do stay tuned, hit subscribe and all that stuff. And I'll see you soon. You take care, stay well, and be happy. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Bye. And that's a wrap. A big thank you for tuning in to today's show. Please stay tuned and hit subscribe for future episodes, bringing you amazing guests, sharing amazing content and amazing insights. Really excited to bring you these. The Forge Ahead Show is sponsored by nickelston.com. If you want to connect with me, you can find all the ways possible through the website. If you want to drop me a message, always great to hear from you. But in the meantime, if I don't catch you before, I'll see you at the next episode. And you take care, guys. Cheers now. Bye. Bye-bye.